Good morning, everybody. Starting a little bit early today. Unfortunately, there will be many people that went through the natural disasters, unnatural disasters, we should call them, in Kentucky, Missouri, Ohio, and all the other states that got hit by the tornado outbreak that will not be able to join us today. So, prayers for those people who are out of power or who just are missing straight up weather warfare on the South. And the way that these unnatural disasters are being handled has now changed dramatically under the Trump administration, and not in the ways that you might think. What I'm going to show you next will be very unsettling for some of you who are still in the right-left paradigm, because things have changed dramatically. Now, here's what's going on. We're going to get into that and other headlines today. But first, let's address this whole weather warfare situation. Remember how Trump criticized Biden's response to the hurricane and how he and Musk sent out a bunch of out-of-touch Trojan horse Starlinks, which you can't even use in a lights-out situation unless you already had solar and a battery bank. But for many people, all of that was swept away with the floods. Well, just last month in Arkansas, disaster victims got no help from Trump because he wants to shift the responsibility of disaster relief to the states. Even though we all know that it's the feds that are waging weather warfare against the countryside and those who want to be out of the cities. Now, we all know that FEMA is broken, but you got to put something else in place in terms of disaster relief for these people. You can't just pull the rug out from under them. Either FEMA needs to be fixed or change the leadership or revamp it or something completely different. Don't just cut aid to people who need it. And here is what happened in Arkansas just last month. Tornado victims blocked from federal recovery aid after Trump denied the request. Now, here's my opinion. We pay tax money into disaster relief, don't we? And so, in my opinion, even if a state of emergency is not declared, there need to be federal dollars going to each and every family who lost their homes. It's part of the taxes that we pay. And if you're going to get rid of FEMA, guess what? There should be millions and millions of extra dollars, shouldn't there, if you fired FEMA, that you could give to these people to help them rebuild their homes, right? I mean, let's read this so that you know that I'm not just picking on Trump and I'm not making this up. Now, I have no idea how he's going to handle the recent tornado outbreak. Several states were hit. I have no idea what he's doing with that. But if this story is any indication of how he might handle the current situation, then this is not good. It says here, disaster survivors in Arkansas left homeless by recent tornadoes have been blocked from receiving federal recovery aid after Trump rejected the state's request to declare a major disaster in March. Trump administration denied Huckabee Sanders' request for individual and public assistance following an outbreak of severe storms and tornadoes that also affected neighboring Mississippi and Missouri and left more than 40 people dead. Now, this recent outbreak that just happened a couple days ago, it's close to this as well. About 40 people so far that are missing or dead. Let's keep reading here. The denial follows executive orders signed by Trump, seeking to shift the burden of disaster response and recovery from the federal government onto the states, as extreme weather becomes increasingly destructive and costly in the warming world. It is unclear how states will fill the financial void, which for decades has been viewed as a federal responsibility, given the wide-reaching, multi-state nature of disasters. Now, you can imagine that many millions of people living under this situation likely voted for Trump And I'm not saying that they should have voted for Harris. What I'm telling you is we have an accountability problem. When we vote one way and then our brains turn off, and then we just simply don't hold people accountable just because they're on our side, that's a problem. This is how these people get away with this. How could this have happened? How could Trump have left these people hang out to dry? Now, I told you years ago that none of these politicians stand on principle. They sway with the wind, don't they? But Trump there's something different about him. He makes a lot of promises to the people that voted for him, and then he breaks those promises, and then the people that voted for him don't hold him accountable. Trump promised that our food prices and the prices of everything was not going to go up because of the tariffs. Then he moved the goalpost and said, we're going to have to experience a little bit of pain. And now all of that's off the table, and there is no end in sight to when all of this is going to get fixed. Let's keep reading here about this, and we'll move into some other stuff. Both Trump and Department of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, have made it clear they want to eliminate FEMA, which spends billions each year helping people get temporary housing and rebuilding after storms. Now, I'm not defending FEMA. FEMA has done a horrible job, did a worse job under Biden. But you don't just throw the baby out with the bathwater. People need help. So if you're getting rid of FEMA, then again, you should have extra money without carrying all that overhead for FEMA to hand out to people to help them rebuild and give them assistance. Let's keep reading. FEMA also funds public assistance for municipalities after disasters, including tornadoes, hurricanes, and wildfires. The denial of the request, dated April 11th, said the Trump administration had determined that the damage, listen to this, the damage from this event was not of such severity magnitude as to be beyond the capabilities of the state, affected local governments and voluntary agencies. Accordingly, we have determined that supplemental federal assistance is not necessary. It is so far unclear whether Missouri and Mississippi will face similar denials. So there you go. Now, not only did Trump deny Arkansas, he also denied aid for flooding to West Virginia and a windstorm in Washington state. He also refused North Carolina's request for extended relief funding in the aftermath of Hurricane Helene. I'll put links to these stories so you could read this for yourself. Now, what is going on here? Well, I believe the intent here is to bankrupt the insurance companies and to clear out most of the unincorporated places across the U.S., to corral people into bigger cities where there's more protection, quote unquote. Now, by now, let's get into this story. You've heard about the Palm Springs fertility clinic that got targeted in an explosion that leaves 1 dead and 4 injured. Remember, fertility is one of Trump's flagship offerings, offering to pay for people to use fertility clinics using federal dollars. And we all thought this was a bad idea because these fertility clinics oftentimes are responsible for storing women's eggs, which are microscopic. And so these eggs could be anywhere. People have lost eggs. They've gotten eggs confused with other people, raising children that are not their own. And it goes on and on and on. And talk about trafficking of organs. This would be the one organ that would probably be of the most value because it's an untraceable soul. A soul without an identity that they can create and store and imprison anywhere they want. They can clone them. They can make super soldiers out of them. They can do whatever they want. Let's read about this. Let's play this, see if this plays here.
Officials in California say police and firefighters are responding to an explosion that damaged a fertility clinic, leaving at least 1 person dead, according to an official who spoke to the Associated Press. Police say the blast appeared to be an intentional act of violence. The city of Palm Springs said Saturday in a social media post the explosion happened at 11 a.m. local time, asking residents to avoid the area. Investigators are assessing what caused the explosion, according to spokesperson Nicole Lozano. Dr. Meher Abdallah, who runs the American Reproductive Center's fertility clinic that was damaged, told the Associated Press in a phone interview all of his staff were safe and accounted for. The explosion damaged the practice's office space where it conducts consultations with patients, but left the IVF lab and all of the stored embryos there unharmed.
So, what is this about? Well, I believe this could be a false flag to draw attention to this so that they'll now have to say, oh, we're going to have to federally protect these places. And that will give them free reign to do whatever they want with these eggs. I don't know. That's just my gut feeling at this point. Very suspicious event. And I don't buy the cover story, especially since Trump's recent announcement about IVF clinics. Most people don't see IVF clinics as a threat, and it wouldn't be a typical target of someone. Okay. So this is 100% suspicious. Some of you seem to agree in the chat, so that they can use this as a catalyst to further the IVF agenda. Now, you're probably wondering, Casey, why do you always see the worst in Trump? Well, here's the thing. My accountability is to you. People like you and me. You and me have much more in common than you and Trump, or you and Biden, or you and Harris. And if we pay tax dollars for disaster relief, you should get that money back when you need it. Doesn't matter if someone declared something or didn't. It should be outside of that. Now, if you haven't figured it out by now, our government agenda is becoming very clear, regardless of which side of the fence you fall on politically. Because back to this story about the disaster aid. Huckabee should have embarrassed Trump or called him out when he denied the aid, or at least said something. Instead, she fell in line because she doesn't care about the people of Arkansas. Because if she did, she would have said something. Now, we're going to expand on this whole Trump effect thing, and I'm going to show you the true way that Trump plays 5D chess, and it's not in the way that you think that he does. Now, if you follow him on Truth Social, probably already heard his rant against Bruce Springsteen. You know, it's kind of funny, but there's something much deeper at play here that we need to discuss. And then we'll get into Trump's black associations and the true reason why he chooses the black people that he does to attach his name to. We're going to break all that down as well. Trump is essentially a walking controlled demolition. That's his job. He's a showman. The showman to draw and attract as much dysfunction and extremism as possible so that when they demolish him, everybody goes down with the ship that was attached to him. That's what I believe he is. He's a chaos magician. He has weaponized our disdain for the left to get people on the right to defend his actions as righteous. Let me say that again. Trump has weaponized our disdain for the left to get people on the right to defend his actions as righteous. And this will come back to bite conservatives eventually, and it already has in many ways. We're going to start with this Bruce Springsteen story. Now, if you don't know who Bruce Springsteen is, he's been making music for a really long time, but he really gained popularity when I was in high school with Born in the USA, which was a song that back then went viral, I guess you could say. And they just wouldn't stop playing this song. Remember this? And then it was all over MTV. I did some research just so my memory served me correctly, because you know how sometimes you remember something a different way. So I had to do some research, and I found out that Reagan actually quoted the song Springsteen responded to that, suggesting at the time that Springsteen had solid right-leaning values. Now, the times were a bit different back then. A lot of these bands and musicians and actors and actresses, they weren't really outwardly political. One prime example was when Michael Jackson did, I think he threw like a concert called like Live Aid or something like that. And there were people from all different backgrounds that got together to do this concert. Didn't matter what side of politics you were on. I don't even think people talked about politics much back then. Why? Because it was us against Russia. Remember? The Cold War. In fact, one of Springsteen's albums was actually credited with helping to bring down the Berlin Wall. So there's the history of Bruce Springsteen. He's kind of a middle of the road pop rock artist. Now, I wasn't really a fan of Springsteen. I was just in a different place in my life. And it just wasn't my kind of music during that time. But Springsteen was always kind of like the white American Bible Belt rock, I guess is the best way you could describe him. Good, clean rock and roll that most people could relate to. But here's the setup. And here's where we get into the gaslighting and what's happening right now with Bruce Springsteen. Because this very middle of the road Bible Belt rock star somewhere along the line turned liberal. He flip-flopped. And in his most recent gaffe, he supported Kamala Harris for president. Now you're probably thinking to yourself, well, that happens, Casey. He moved to California. He turned into a liberal. I don't know. I think this is a setup. I think this is part of chaos magic because of what I'm going to tell you next. But I wanted to give you the history of this to set this all up so we can understand this. Trump just destroyed Bruce Springsteen for what seems to come across as a left-wing rant against how Trump is running the country. Bruce Springsteen spoke this at a concert. Here he is here. And so now it's Springsteen versus Trump. Let's read about what started all this and what he said at the concert and then what Trump's response was, because it's actually kind of funny. During the pause in the show, Springsteen's overseas. Okay. He's in Manchester. Okay. So that's the setup, right? He would never do this in America. And this is why I want you to see how this is all staged. It's chaos magic. During a pause in the show, Springsteen addressed the crowd. The mighty E Street Band, that's his band, is here tonight to call upon the righteous power of art, of music, of rock and roll in dangerous times. In my home, the America I love, the America I've written about, that has been a beacon of hope and liberty for 250 years. And it's currently in the hands of a corrupt, incompetent, and treasonous administration. Tonight, we ask all who believe in democracy and the best of our American experiment to rise with us, raise our voices against authoritarianism, and let freedom ring. Now, if he was saying this about Kamala Harris, he would be completely 100% correct, wouldn't he? But he tried to vote for Kamala, and now he's calling Trump out. But he's still correct. But because he's on the left, it brought the rage of Trump. Now listen to what Trump said. Now this is funny because Trump's like I don't know. He's like a little kid. He can't handle criticism. I see that the highly overrated Bruce Springsteen goes to a foreign country to speak badly about the president of the U.S. Never liked him, never liked his music or his radical left politics. And importantly, he's not a talented guy, just a pushy, obnoxious jerk who fervently supported crooked Joe Biden. I mean, you guys, this is a riot. This is hilarious. Let's keep reading here. A mentally incompetent fool and our worst ever president who came close to destroying our country. Now, again, Trump's being disingenuous here. Biden was not running the country. And until Trump calls out the group of people that was actually really running the country, then he's still being disingenuous. Why won't he do that? It'd be so easy to do. It'd help people understand how our country works. Biden was not doing anything. He was they could probably barely put his clothes on and get him to the podium. We need to know the truth. And Trump knows the truth, but he won't tell us. Let's keep reading here. If I wasn't elected, it would have been gone by now. Sleepy Joe didn't have a clue as to what he was doing, but Springsteen is dumb as a rock and couldn't see what was going on. Or could he? Which is even worse. This dried out prune of a rocker, his skin is all atrophied, ought to keep his mouth shut until he gets back into the country. That's just standard fare. Then we'll all see how it goes for him. So Trump is threatening him here, threatening an American citizen, because what I'm going to read you next is actually happening. You're not going to believe this, but apparently they are now exercising. Let's get over here to this part. This new rule. It's not really a new rule, but they can now go onto your phone, even as an American citizen, when you come back into the country. This is insane. Let's read this. Well, let me check in with you guys and we'll read this. They can literally snoop onto your phone and look through it to see what your political affiliations are and decide whether or not they're going to harass you. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the channel. We did start a little bit early today, about 10 minutes early. So you can hit the 125% speed or 150% speed on your watch page, and it'll get you caught up before the end of the show. And this was the threat. What I'm going to read you next. This is the threat that Trump made to Bruce Springsteen when he comes back in the country, that he could literally be harassed, even though he's an American citizen. Do I have to give border control my phone's password? What travelers should know. They're setting this up. I told you this was going to happen. This isn't just about illegals. See if this plays. Okay, that's just words and song. Rising reports of U.S. Customs and Border Protection searches and detainments have raised concerns about travelers about what could happen if they're stopped when trying to re-enter the country. Now, notice they're not saying anything about illegals versus citizens yet, right? They're leaving this open. Customs and Border Patrol has long had the authority, listen to this, listen closely, to search the contents of electronic devices to verify someone's identity or assess if they're a risk to national security. Notice nowhere in here do they talk about being an illegal. However, some immigration attorneys say such searches are becoming more frequent under Trump administration. This is authoritarianism. This is exactly what Bruce Springsteen was talking about. And now social media profiles or being outspoken on a political issue are also under higher scrutiny. There you go. Travelers' rights against warrantless searches are weakened within 100 miles of any port of entry. So any person is subject to being questioned and their electronic devices, including phones, tablets, and laptops, searched by border agents regardless of immigration status. Regardless of immigration status. Told you guys this was coming, and it's now here. The wall is complete, and we're just as much locked in as they're locked out. All your privacy is gone. However, travelers can still take steps to better protect their digital privacy at borders, including turning off biometrics to unlock their phones. Here's what to know. Do I have to give my password to border agents? Technically, no. But what happens next depends on your immigration status. U.S. citizens and lawful permanent residents cannot be denied entry into the country if they refuse to hand over or unlock their devices with their passwords, according to the American Civil Liberties Union. Know your rights. U.S. airport ports of entry. However, Border Protection might seize your phone and even keep it for weeks or months. Even if you're an American, they can take your phone and keep it for weeks and months. In this case, make sure you write down the name and badge number of the officer and ask for a receipt. However, non-citizen visa holders, tourists, might be denied entry if they don't give their passwords. If you decide to unlock your phone with your password, enter it yourself instead of giving it to the agent. They still might demand that you share it, but it's a precaution we're trying to take. So this is our future. Wow. So what else is going on here? Let's get into this next story. Now we're going to talk about, so we just talked about white relations and how Trump handles that. Now we're going to talk about the black aspect to this, because there's something going on with that. We're going to dig into this. Now, part of Trump's MAGA chaos is about subtle gaslighting. He does this often, and I've picked up on this. This whole white South African thing, it's subtle gaslighting. That's what he's doing. He's stirring the pot. And people of color have even been completely deceived by Trump. They think that he actually advocates for us, when it's exactly the opposite. Let me explain. Trump has handpicked the worst representation of functional black culture, and he's highlighting it to the rest of the world. This is Snoop Dogg, of course. He's being called a sellout. One of the handpicked dysfunctional characters in black culture. Oh, Casey, we love Snoop. He's awesome. I used to love Snoop when I was a teenager, a rebellious teenager, or in college before I had children, when I was trying to act hard and be edgy, but not as an adult, and not as someone now who has children, who does not want them to pick up this particular example in their life. 3/4 of the men that Trump has featured, 3/4 of the black men that he has featured, are borderline mentally ill. Now, I tried to leave a comment on this story here, and it was rejected. I said, having Snoop perform is a strategic move by Trump to try to end Snoop, whose reputation will be forever tarnished. Think about it. Trump always profiled the worst of black culture: Kodak Black, Lil Wayne, Yeezy, and now pothead Snoop. Why don't we see black lawyers in the White House or black business owners? I hope that you can see what's really going on here. Now, I had to look this up, but there are many, many black millionaires. 1.79 million black millionaires in America alone. And he could have picked any one of them, many of which probably share his conservative values. Right? Why not invite those people to the White House? But instead, we get all of the dysfunction. Kanye West, Kodak Black, Lil Wayne, and now Snoop Dogg. Several of the aforementioned displaying manic episodes on social media after being invited by Trump to the White House. We saw Kodak Black in the street eating chicken in the middle of the road. And then, of course, Kanye West, Lil Wayne. It's all there. And even even what's his name? I'm drawing a blank. The guy who's in court right now. Look at all the pictures of him with Trump. So now you're starting to see how this works. It's subtle gaslighting. It's the opposite of what black people think he's doing. Oh, Trump's cool. He hangs out with all these people. No, it's gaslighting. It's gaslighting. And I hope that people see this. Trump is essentially trying to destabilize race relations by highlighting black dysfunction. Now, let me tell you the subliminal here. The subliminal for Trump's white supporters would be something like this. See what happens when white people give black people the spotlight? They implode. They self-destruct. And this is what you're seeing with Kanye West and Kodak Black, who've done exactly that. Now, of course, this isn't the truth, but this was the intended message, I believe. This is what they do. Because again, Trump could have picked 1.79 million other black millionaires and we would have had a better representation of, black success, right? Now, what else is going on? Let's get into some of these other stories, you guys. Yeah, give me your thoughts on what you think about all this. But basically, Snoop is getting canceled right now. They're calling him a sellout because he did his presidential ball. And then of course, Snoop is backpedaling. He's like, it was only 30 minutes and blah, blah, blah. And I'm trying to spread the wealth. I'm trying to get close to the wealth so that I can share it with my black brothers and sisters. No. He got paid. He took the bait and he became the example. Now, Trump also does his share of gaslighting to the right as well, as we talked about with the Bruce Springsteen story. Because on the surface, this next story I'm going to share with you looks like a positive story. And it's always good when a gun law falls in favor of the Second Amendment, right? Trump admin permits sale of device that allows standard firearms to fire like machine guns. So, and your first thought is, go Trump, Second Amendment, right? But ask yourself, why this? Why a law that allows machine guns? Aren't there about a dozen other gun laws that could have been reversed before we get to machine guns? Do you see what I'm saying here? How about eliminating the registering or requiring of registering of guns? That would have been a good start. Or how about allowing open carry in all states? Or how about removing all restrictions on AR-15s that the Democrats have imposed over the years? Those would be good places to start with the Second Amendment. I don't want the federal government knowing what my private arsenal is, because at any time they can come and try to take it. So that would be a good start. But instead, we go from 0 to 100 miles an hour with gun rights. And now you get to have a machine gun. Wow. Now, what are you guys' thoughts as to why this is happening? Let me read a little bit of this article. Trump administration has decided to permit the sale of devices that enable standard firearms to fire like machine guns. A move that one person familiar with the matter said was by far the most dangerous thing this administration has done on gun policy. Justice Department announced a settlement in a lawsuit brought by National Association of Gun Rights. The lawsuit challenged an ATF rule banning forced reset triggers, devices that allow semi-automatic weapons to fire rapid bursts of bullets. So, what do you guys think this is about? Let me go back into the chat and then I'll give you my thoughts about why he went straight for the jugular, as they say. Good morning. What do you guys think this is? Now, remember, we have an example. We have a track record, don't we? Trump jumping the gun, says Sister G. Absolutely 100%. The leaders went mad, says Lilith of Eden. Okay, so here are my thoughts. I've been screening this Star Wars series called Andor, which is actually pretty accurate to how our own government uses subversion and tricks people to entrap them so that they can advance their agenda. So in the series Andor, several times, there were these groups who were on the same side, but they were offered up as sacrifices in order to incite the rebellion, which the Empire actually really wanted to have happen so that they could crack down even more. They would allow certain policies, and they were a setup for more violence. Violence that was used as a catalyst for the control that they wanted to implement. And that is what I think is at play here with this new machine gun law. Here, this will be the argument. They will say, we need more surveillance and more control because now we have MS-13 gang members with machine guns or middle-aged white men with machine guns. I think this is the setup, you guys. They're going to start to pivot this authoritarianism away from the illegals and onto the American public. So I guess time will tell. But that is the new gun rule. Wow. Now, there's weird stuff happening, you guys. Trump just allowed in, if you haven't heard this, El Chapo's entire family. You know, the guy that was sending a bunch of drugs into America? Well, they just got let in the country under Trump to live in America. Now, forget about the author of this, forget about Schumer. That's supposed to get you to allow it if you are a conservative because you don't want to side with Schumer, right? Remember, that's how the right-left paradigm works. Let's see if this plays out. Okay, that's not telling us anything. Schumer sharply criticized Trump following reports that 17 family members of the Sinaloa cartel were allowed into the U.S. last week as part of a deal with the Trump administration. Now, under what scenario would this ever be acceptable? I can't think of any. In Florida remarks Thursday, Schumer accused the president of being soft on crime and of rolling out a welcome mat to El Chapo and his family, inviting them into our country. If you're related to El Chapo, Donald Trump says, come right in. Now, of course, Schumer is hyperbolizing here because he has to do that in order to anger conservatives so that they'll defend Trump. You see how this works? They'll say, oh, there's got to be some logical explanation. Or, why are you picking on Trump? And meanwhile, the intended consequence is realized. What messages is sent to our drug lords, criminals, and terrorists? Where are our Republican colleagues on this? Where's the outrage from the other side of the aisle who say they want to prevent criminals from crossing our borders? So this was some kind of deal. I don't know what El Chapo gave up to allow this to happen. But to me, this is all just chaos magic. Now, if you haven't heard by now, Utah and Florida just banned fluoride in the drinking water. RFK Jr. got this done. Let's read this. Utah and Florida just banned fluoride from their drinking water. Now, a new fluoride-based product is being targeted by RFK Jr. U.S. health regulators announced an effort on Tuesday to phase out ingestible fluoride supplements, sometimes used to strengthen children's teeth, opening a new front in the Health Secretary Robert Kennedy's effort against a mainstay of dental care. FDA said it will conduct a scientific review of the children's products by late October with the aim of removing them from the market. Formally withdrawing a medical product requires a lengthy rulemaking process. Now, here's what I think is going on here. Okay, this is more chaos magic. So, yeah, are they really going to do this? Are they really doing this? They might, but then they might not. They might say they tested it and they found it's okay. So we're going to leave it the way it is. Who knows what's going to happen? Here's one thing I do know. We can't trust these people because of the stories we just read today. All the flip-flopping, the going back and forth, the bait and switch. I don't know, super weird. Now, here's something a little bit further off in the future. We've been covering a lot of the Highlander and Outlander lore and TV shows and movies. And we saw all these connections to Trump and the Standing Stones of Callanish, where his mother was born, and Samhain, the festival, the 5th of November, time travel, and all that stuff, right? I've got dozens of videos on the topic. So, what's up with this? Well, apparently, there is a new Highlander movie in production, slated for 2027. Guess who is going to be Connor McLeod? Remember, Trump's mother's maiden name is McLeod. That was part of what we had uncovered. Guess who it's going to be? It's going to be Superman, the Man of Steel, Henry Cavill. Wow. So, Scottish Trump, Superman confirmed. And with the newest installation of the Highlander. Now, I'll be watching this, but this is a few years out. I don't even think they began filming yet, but they thought that it was important to announce this. Now, let me give you an update on this Trump birthday parade. They've now increased the number of soldiers that'll be at the parade from 6,600 to now 7,500. Let's read this article. Tanks, cannons, and soldiers sleeping in D.C. offices inside Trump birthday military parade. See if there's any.
The parade is being scheduled for the Army's 250th anniversary. The date, June 14th, also happens to be President Donald Trump's 79th birthday. Armored vehicles and nearly 7,000 troops will march past a reviewing stand for the president along Constitution Avenue in Washington, D.C. Trump demanded a militarized July 4th celebration during his first term, but drew heavy criticism for politicizing Independence Day.
So, there you go. This is what's going on. It's Trump's 79th birthday will feature dozens of tanks rumbling through the streets, warplanes buzzing overhead, and 7,500 soldiers now housed in government office buildings downtown. Wow, so that'll be something to see. I'll probably decode it and see what's going on with that. Let's see what else is going on. Oh, we got to cover AI jobs. Look at this. So these are our headlines now. What jobs to get into that aren't going to be replaced by AI? Would you have ever imagined a headline like this 10 years ago or 5 years ago? But here we are. 13 jobs that don't require a college degree and won't be replaced by AI. If you think most Americans finish college, think again. Going to college is an American rite of passage, but not everyone goes to college, and many students never make it to graduation. Among Americans aged 25 and over, only 38% are college graduates. A new report now identifies 13 careers that offer good pay and long-term stability and don't require a college degree. Better still, none of the jobs is likely to be replaced by AI. The analysis focused on 3 or 4 fears that people have right now. Americans worry about potential signs of a softening job market. They're concerned about the cost of college and whether a degree is still worth it. And workers in many fields fear that AI or robots or other non-human hands might sweep in to replace them. Strange times, you guys. Strange times. Now, if you haven't heard by now, here's another breaking headline. A couple people died on this Mexican ship that hit the Brooklyn Bridge, snapping masks and killing 2 crew members. See if there's a video here on this. Now, the first thing that came to mind was The Dark Knight Rises, with the bridges being blown out. That was the first thing that came to mind when I thought about this. You guys, this is the second bridge it's been struck. Remember the Baltimore Bridge? There's something about the bridges. And maybe the bridges are a metaphor for the cutting off of our borders, from the isolation of America with the tariffs, and now this border thing where they can snoop into your phones, walls going up everywhere, golden domes, weather warfare, everything we talked about today, corralling us all into areas. Maybe that's what this is about. Now, I wonder if there was any damage to the Brooklyn Bridge. It says here, 142-year-old bridge was spared major damage, but at least 19 people aboard the ship needed medical treatment. 2 of the 4 people who suffered serious injuries later died. Wow. The cause of the collision is under investigation. Video shows heavy traffic on the span at the time of the 8:20 p.m. collision. No one on the bridge was injured. The vessel, which was flying a giant Mexican flag, had 277 people aboard, then drifted into a pier on the riverbank as onlookers scrambled away. That is just crazy. Now, here's our last story today. If you haven't heard yet, they are slashing Social Security if you have a student loan. Under Trump, they're increasing the amount that they can garnish your Social Security if you didn't pay your school loans. So this applies to people who got school loans that are outstanding. Under Biden's rule, it's insane. This is just literally blows my mind. Under Biden's rule, the max that they could take out of your Social Security, they would have to leave you with $1,800 a month. But under Trump's new rule, they can cut your Social Security all the way down to $750 a month if you have outstanding school loans. They basically take half of your check to pay off your school loans. That is insane, you guys. Insane. Now, let me go back into the chat. Good morning. Let's see what your guys' thoughts are on all this. Can you believe this? Can you believe the reality that we're living in now? You guys, there are many, many of you that come to this channel who have outstanding school loans. A lot of you maybe didn't even finish school, so you didn't even get any benefit out of it. And now to know that your Social Security is going to get cut in half to pay that back is unfathomable to me. Unfathomable. So, why are you getting Social Security if you have a school loan? Okay, can please expand on that question? Because you paid into it? You don't know unless you've taken out a school loan, okay? School loans are something that they trick young people into getting at 17, 18 years old. They give you this impression that you are going to make a bunch of money, that it's going to be easy to finish college. College is overpriced. And unless you've done this and gone through it, you don't know what we're talking about. They trick you into it. Okay. So you start accruing debt already at 18 years old. And then you get a government who doesn't even pay you the proper wages. Now, I have my school loans paid off. I was responsible. But I have empathy for people who weren't able to get it done because I know what the job market's like. And I've shared that with you. I've shared with you that how I've been laid off many, many times in my career. And I've lost homes and things because the job market is so up and down in certain sectors. I was in sales, but it didn't matter. Doesn't matter how well you perform. You just get laid off. You have to move your entire family somewhere different. Now, I'm not complaining because that was a part of my life that's over now, but I did the right thing. I paid off all my school loans, but a lot of people don't have that luxury. And you're tricked into it, literally, from a young age because you're sold the American dream. You're told you're going to make a bunch of money when you get out of college. My first job out of college was $32,000 a year. Now, back then, I was able to buy a home, and my wife was able to stay home to raise our daughter. But those were different times back then. My house was I bought my first house at $100,000. Different times back then, but now it's much different. The ratio of the cost of living is much, much higher than what people are making. Okay. So $30,000 ain't going to cut it. $40,000, 50, 60, even 70 might not cut it in certain markets as a first job, especially if you're paying back school loans that are costing you $500, $600 a month to pay back. So the fact of the matter is Social Security is your money. Okay. And a lot of people also get tricked into, going for the best and most expensive college, right? So they're told, oh, go to the best college where it costs you $200,000 in school loans or $150,000 in school loans. And then they're accruing all this debt. And then for one reason or another, it all doesn't shape up, right? So that's the truth of the matter. I'm not advocating for people just to rack up a bunch of debt and then file bankruptcy, but sometimes it happens. And in the case of school loans, I think this is a reasonable thing that should be looked at. Okay. And this is a person who actually paid my loans back. You would think that I wouldn't think that should be the case because it wouldn't be fair, right? Why did I have to pay my school loans back and other people didn't? But even with that, I have compassion for people who didn't know what they were getting into at such a young age. Okay. So yes, there are no jobs. They're not well-paying jobs and all that stuff. So Marcy paid off her college loan. Good job, Marcy. Yes, you cannot declare bankruptcy on a student loan. It almost seemed like a trap, another honey trap. Get you on the hook, and then they just take it all back when it's time for them to pay out your Social Security. It's insane. Now, I can bet you that there are a lot of Trump people that voted for Trump who are in this boat, who are now scratching their head going, are you serious? When I retire in 5 years, I'm going to have to pay back. They're going to take half my Social Security to pay back loans that I accrued like 30 years ago or 20 years ago. People are going to be in sticker shock, aren't they? So Marcy paid hers off in 3 years. Good job, Marcy. Takes some discipline, doesn't it? You have to forego personal gratification. You have to forego maybe a car payment or something like that to be responsible. But sometimes life happens to people, they lose a job or they lose a husband or bad relationship, divorce. They get pregnant and, or they got to go to work or whatever. So I'm just trying to, the Bible says you're supposed to forgive debt after 7 years. The Bible says you're not supposed to loan money to people for longer than 7 years. That's actually in the Bible. So, all right. Maria says her daughter's almost done paying her student loan for nursing school. Good job. That tells me she had good parenting to be responsible. And I had good parenting too. My mom taught me to be responsible. And that the most important thing my mother told me was that problems don't go away. They just compound. You can't get out of it. You might think you can get out of it, but it's better to face your problems straight on and figure out a way to do it. And that's kind of how I handled my divorce too. I was like, wow, I'm going to be broke for a decade. So I just started the clock. I literally started the clock. I was like, there's no way out of this. I got to pay. I'm going to be by myself. I'm not going to see my kids very much. And so I have to pay this other person to raise my kids, which really sucks. But I got 10 years. And that's what I told myself. And at the end of the 10 years was right about the time that I started thinking about myself. But at the beginning, I had to do what you got to do. Can't get out of it. It is what it is. But not all people got raised by great parents to know how to manage life. And they find themselves in these holes. And I don't know. Those are just my personal feelings, you guys. Cannon's got 20 more to pay for cannons. Yeah. Bonnie had great parents. That's awesome. Percent of the population under the poverty line, what is possible? And that's the travesty of it, is that a lot of these people who tried in life, once again, college isn't for everybody. So some people tried college. Maybe they got 3 years in, they owe 50 grand and it just wasn't for them. And they tried, or for whatever reason, or maybe it got too expensive and they just pulled out, or maybe another opportunity came up in their life. Maybe they went blue collar instead and learned a trade and they just dropped college. Well, let's say now that they've gone through their whole life, their blue collar job, they weren't super successful, but they made enough to get by. And then now it's retirement age. And now this thing that's been compounding interest has come back to haunt them. And it's going to take half of their Social Security. I don't think that's fair, you guys. I'm sorry. I just don't think it is. I think it's a trap. All right. Well, I guess we're going to pop off of here. Appreciate everybody showing up. It was a lot of fun today. Some serious topics, but these are things you need to know about. We need to hold all of our politicians accountable. We need to demand that the people who got hit by the tornadoes get federal assistance. We need to demand it. We can't let Trump slip out of this one. He needs to declare a national emergency for all the states involved, and they all need to get some assistance. Okay, we're not letting him off the hook with this. And no, we don't want border protection when you go on a cruise. Let's say you go on a cruise and border protection comes in and they want to look it through everyone's phone. We need to say, no, you can't do that. Okay. And everything else we talked about today. This is about accountability of our conservative elected officials. That's what this is about. This isn't about picking on anyone. It's about accountability. And if you don't want me to be accountable, if you don't want me to hold these people accountable, then I guess we get what we deserve, you guys. I guess we get what we deserve. I love each and every one of you. Have a great rest of your day. Much love.